It's nothing personal. It's David Samson joining us right now. David, great to see you again. You can check out his show, great logo behind him. I listen to it almost every day, especially on the business front, sports biz, legal news, the whole deal. So very timely to have you on today, David. How you doing? And your thoughts on the weekend explosion of details related to Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz, who likely will never be in Major League Baseball again.
Oh, good morning. I think it's more than likely. I think it's a guarantee they will never throw another pitch. I think that baseball is doing what they always do, which is they're going to continue their investigation, but they're going to wait and wait and wait to see what happens with this indictment. And the lawyers for the two players did not waste any time in ridiculous statements, decrying their innocence and that they love the game of baseball and would never do anything to harm it. And my view is that the reason I think they're finished, when they put down an indictment, the way it works is the U.S. district, the Southern District, the Eastern District, let's just say the prosecutors, they don't like indictments for cases they can't win. And so when they allow for an indictment, it's because they've got stuff. And whether it's the smoking gun or not, they have enough to show beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury of those men's peers that they did this. And so it's not that they're guilty until proven innocent. They are innocent until proven guilty. But all of these prosecutors keep a scorecard. I promise you that. And they don't like losing. So it is my understanding. We'll see how it plays out. But as far as their baseball careers, finished. And it really is too bad.
Hey, I've seen billions. Okay, David? I've seen billions. So I know how. What's his name? Paul Giamavalo. He handles the prosecuting.
Giamatti.
They don't miss. Okay, they don't miss. If this gets public and they're arresting people, they don't miss usually. So my question is, will they plead? Can they plead this down? I know they're saying they're innocent, and we're assuming they're innocent because you're innocent until proven guilty. But is there a way to plead this down if they have all this evidence against you, saying, "Hey, you threw this pitch and you threw this pitch, and we have texts and we have calls," or do they just say, "You know what? We're going to fight this till the end"?
Oh no, they'd much rather not have to go to trial because it's a win if they're going to plea, you generally plead guilty and it's a deal. You get a deal, whether it's whatever time, if it's going to be probation, if it's going to be a year, if it's going to be 6 months. There was someone who wrote that it's possible to get 65 years because it's true with all the counts. What you do is you add up the maximum prison time for each count and they add up to 65 years. Well, I'll give it to you here so you have the scoop. It's a guarantee they will not be in prison for 65 years each. There will be some sort of, even if they are convicted, when they're sentenced, it still won't be 65 years. But you're right. What the lawyers do is they meet with the prosecutors and they talk about what kind of deal can be done because really there's incentive for both sides. It's very costly for Clase and Ortiz to defend themselves in court. And it's also costly for the people in terms of time that it takes to go all the way up through trial, up to sentencing. So every case, actually, both sides generally are looking to do a deal.
Players, past and present players, their visceral hate for gambling in the game because of the integrity that we lose integrity of the game. Do we need to change? I'm sure you remember the rule, was it Rule 61 or whatever? It's read
21.
in spring training. 21, thank you. It's read in spring training. Everybody reads it. AJ and I always talk about this. Oh, we heard it all the time. And it was something that kind of just went through the motions. Does Major League Baseball need to up their responsibility in making sure the players understand this? Or is this just a one-off? And then the one last year with some minor leaguers was a one-off. Like, do they need to do a better job?
I think your point is a very interesting one. And what I would say is when Rule 21 is read to you, here's what happens. Glazed eyes. Doesn't apply to me. Don't care about it. And then we have to read it in Spanish, no less. And then it's really glazed eyes for the players who don't speak Spanish. We all know right from wrong inside that clubhouse. The rule is we have to read it because we want the players never to say, "Oh, I didn't know that I couldn't do that." To me, the fact that gambling is legalized now and there are apps and there are partnerships that have accrued to the benefit of players because teams have more money and salaries are going up, et cetera, There is no excuse that your head is in the sand. You know when you're doing something wrong. Clase cannot say, oh, it's one pitch. I still love baseball. I still want to win. What's the difference between a ball and a strike? I'm just helping someone get a couple grand. The integrity of the game happens when Clase then loses money or someone pressures him into saying, it's not a pitch I'm interested in. It's the total. It's not the total. It's the game score. It's who wins, who loses. That's when you get into third rail integrity type stuff. And so the hope is that players and everyone involved in sports realizes that as a deterrent, when you are punished for life, that ought to be enough to tell you to stop doing this. But people continue to be stupid. And so I don't know how that changes. But I promise you guys, they're not going to take away gambling. They're not going to make it illegal. The apps aren't going to go away. The partnerships aren't going to go away. There's too much money at stake.
This episode of FT is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. Give me an example in Pennsylvania, Kratz.
Right down the street from my house, the Tap House. Not only is it an awesome place to hang out, get your beers, get your drinks, whatever it is, but you know what? The company has the simplicity of Square, and they give back to the community with 10% of all the proceeds that they bring in going back to community projects.
I love it. Sports and sports bars are so good at bringing together local communities, and you can actually take this ad as an excuse to go support your local spot and have yourself a day or a weekend in the neighborhood. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. These businesses are what make the neighborhood the neighborhood. So visit square.com/go/foul to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Again, that's square.com/go/foul to learn more.
I watched the Expos documentary, okay? I'm just going to go here. David, listen, I'm not saying you killed the Expos, but I was on the Twins at the same time, okay? And every week I had to go on a phone call about, contraction and the Expos. Did you know at the time that you had a backdoor deal to get the Marlins? Because I was on a phone call every week saying, oh, man, the Expos and the Twins are going to get contracted. Da-da-da-da-da. The owners don't really, I don't know if they don't want the team, but they were just like, it's a better deal for MLB if we lose 2 teams. So can you talk about, why wasn't that talked about in the documentary? Because contraction was a real thing, and I was on one of the teams that had to listen to that bull crap every week.
Well, the final vote was 28-2 in favor of contraction, and the 2 teams that voted against it were your Twins and my Expos.
Yeah,
and back then, the owner of your team was the richest owner in all of baseball, Carl Pohlad.
Yes.
And still there was no direct correlation to payroll because the team was losing money, etc. But back then, my interest was in protecting our space in the game. When I found out the contraction, and I thought it was real, that they wanted to go to 28 teams, until I discovered, hold on, it's being used as leverage in a collective bargaining negotiation. The players need to be told that, hey, you could lose 50 jobs here. It's really more than 50 because of minor league systems, et cetera, but just start at 50. There's 50 jobs at stake. How do you feel about that? We need to change the economics of baseball right now. But after that vote was taken, I stood up in an owners meeting and I read a statement saying, hey, no contraction. We do not want to be contracted, even though the vote said that contraction was going to happen. And then at the time, you may not remember this, it wasn't the Red Sox. It was the California Angels who were being sold. That was the 3rd team in the franchise swap. John Henry was going to sell the Marlins to Jeffrey Loria and buy the Angels from the Gene Autry family trust. But he couldn't get a deal done for the Angels, so he pivoted to the Red Sox, who were for sale, because it was the Yawkey Trust selling, and it was a whole auction for the Red Sox, but it was fixed so that John Henry would win that auction, get the Red Sox, we'd get the Marlins, and baseball would get the Expos, but not contract them, just move them to Washington 3 years later. That's how that deal went down. And why they didn't cover it in the documentary, I wasn't the director or the producer. I was simply interviewed for it, but there's a whole movie inside that franchise swap.
David, I've followed you for a long time. I will say on the doc, my favorite line was when you talked about the minority owners in the Expos and how they couldn't find money anywhere to help with the team, yet They had lots of money for lawyers. Lots of money for
Boy, did they
lawyers.
ever.
For me, that was eye-opening, for real, because I'm trying to learn as much
Millions.
as I can. That was a time for me when I was young, and I was like, yeah, that is funny. They paid millions of dollars for lawyers that they couldn't help their own city and their franchise. So thank you for that line. That definitely helped a lot.
Let me just remind the audience that when the Expos were sold, the price was 18 million Canadian dollars. And that sounds like a lot of money to 99.99% of the people, and I get it. But to the people who are the limited partners of the Expos, their wealth and their prominence and their view of Montreal, I never would have been in the game. Jeffrey Loria never would have been in the game because the goal was to sell to a Canadian. Anybody who could fog up a mirror, and there were a lot of people who could, and all I had to come up with was 18 million, and it was crickets. I'm talking about nobody. That's how Jeffrey Loria got the Expos, because it was the final. Nobody else wanted them. Side note, no one wanted the Marlins either. John Henry wanted out, and we said, well, what do you got? And Larry Lucchino was sent to Florida by Bud Selig. And Larry Lucchino said, hey, the Marlins can't make it in Miami. No one can get a stadium done. Huizinga tried. Henry tried. And so they came up to us and said, hey, do you want to upgrade from the Expos to the Marlins? But it's not really an upgrade. And we said, well, we'll try it. And the rest is history.
The next thing you know, David, you guys could have owned the Yankees if you guys would have just kept going down the line, right? Eventually, you guys could have been Yankees or Dodgers owners if you guys gave up too quick. You put that statue out there in left field, which I liked, and then you guys gave up. But what I want to know is, can baseball work in Montreal? Because, if you watch this documentary, everyone says, oh, we love the Expos. There's this fan base that says we love the Expos. But can it work if they get a new stadium? Because expansion, Rob Manfred wants expansion. But is Montreal a viable alternative? Because I don't think that it is. After watching the documentary and hearing the stories you've told, I don't know that it's a viable option.
So first, you need a deep-pocketed Quebecois. You need someone, a French-Canadian, or anyone who lives in Montreal to want to be the general partner, want to be the owner of the team. Then you need a publicly financed ballpark. And the reason you need that is Major League Baseball wants to charge a really high expansion fee to any ownership group who gets a team. And from an ownership group standpoint, they don't care where the money goes. If they're going to spend $2 billion to get a franchise, if $1.6 billion goes to Major League Baseball and $400 million goes to the stadium, to them, it's still $2 billion. But from baseball's standpoint, they want all $2 billion going into baseball. And so all of these expansion cities, and they're going to keep them all alive until they're going to have a negotiation against each other. It's going to be a bake-off, one city against another. So you're never going to hear Rob Manfred say, oh, that city's been eliminated. No one's going to get eliminated until a deal is done. And it's in the best interest of the owners to have a fully funded stadium. Can Montreal do that? To me, it just seems unlikely because the government has never been willing to do a public-private partnership. But that, to me, is the number one requirement. Well, 1A. One is to find an owner who's local. Two is to have a fully funded ballpark.